What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Keep It Hoop YouTube channel. So I'm sure a lot of you guys know, but the NBA trade deadline was yesterday, and I wanted to go over not all, but some of the trades and give my take on it, break them down a bit, what they do for the teams. And today we're going to look at the CBS.com's list of, I guess they ranked it in terms of importance. Now I'm not going to go over again all the trades, things like the Raptors trading Terrence Davis away, the Spurs getting Marquise Chris, Hornets getting Brad Wanamaker. Not going to go over those. I'm sure you guys can kind of make out what that means for teams, right? Either creating salary cap space or roster spaces, or just teams trying to take a flyer or a chance on a person or a player that might have fallen out of the rotation on another team. So I'm going to start at number 10, which I think is the first trade that has any sort of substance or importance to it, at least in terms of playoff pictures and just games going forward. So the Nuggets getting JaVale McGee, they did trade Isaiah Hartenstein and 2 second-round picks. I thought that the Nuggets gave up a bit more than they needed to, or I guess maybe the Cavs got more than I thought they would. But I do like this trade. JaVale coming back to Denver. It was the second team he's ever played for, but I know McGee gets he gets a bad rep from NBA fans, especially casual fans, because he's synonymous with Shaqtin' a Fool and some of the mistakes he's made earlier in his career. But for the last few years, he's played solid basketball. He's been on winning teams, made it far into the playoffs, and he has that pedigree with him. And I think I like his fit on the Nuggets more than Hartenstein. Hartenstein was a big body himself, but I think JaVale McGee's a bit quicker and a bit more athletic and should give them the rim protection that they kind of needed off the bench, especially. And I like what the Nuggets did overall, especially with adding Aaron Gordon. And you can see that, right, with trading a young player and 2 second-round picks, the Nuggets are trying to win now. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a good trade. The Bulls get Daniel Tice, Troy Brown, and Javonte Green. The Wizards get Daniel Gafford and Chandler Hutchinson, and the Celtics get Mo Wagner and Luke Cornett. So this is a bit of a weird trade, but let's look at what the Bulls get, right? Troy Brown's been a very solid wing rotation piece for the Wizards. Can do a little bit of everything. I think that should help their playoff run. Javonte Green hasn't played much for Boston, at least consistently. When he has, nothing crazy. So I don't think he's going to do anything to move the needle for Chicago. Daniel Tice, I think, gives the Bulls a bit more depth, especially since they had to trade away Luke Cornett and Daniel Gafford. A big that can stretch the floor, can defend, and I like what Chicago did yesterday during the deadline. The Wizards getting Daniel Gafford, I think, is pretty big. The Wizards have been missing an athletic big and a rim protector for a while now, and Daniel Gafford isn't big in terms of height, but he's very athletic, good rim protector. And after Thomas Bryant went down, they've kind of been missing any kind of not that Thomas Bryant gave them a lot of rim protection, but their big man rotation has kind of been unstable, right? Like Robin Lopez gets a lot of minutes, and Mo Wagner was getting minutes, but I do like what Daniel Gafford gives them, some athleticism and should help Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal in the pick and roll game as well. The Celtics getting Mo Wagner and Luke Cornett. Neither of those guys are as good defensively as Tice, and I know Tice wasn't locked down, but I think he gave them a lot of toughness and some rim protection, and just did a lot of the dirty work, things that don't show up in the stat sheet. Um, but yeah, Mo Wagner and Luke Cornett, both big men who can shoot. I think it'll help their offense, but I think they will miss Tice's toughness and defense. Philly getting George Hill and Brazdeikis from the Knicks. Um, Thunder got Tony Bradley, Austin Rivers, 2 second-round picks. The Knicks get Terrence Ferguson and Vincent Poirier. So start with the Sixers. George Hill going to the Sixers, I like that a lot. Gives them some more veteran leadership. A point guard who's been playing in the league for a very long time, can shoot the ball really well and efficiently, can also play off the ball. I think he fits right next to guys like Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, an above average defender. Yeah, I mean, I like that a lot. Brazdeikis probably won't play, maybe G League in the future. Thunder getting Tony Bradley, Austin Rivers. Austin Rivers might get some decent minutes for the Thunder. I think he'll just fill whatever role George Hill had, and bringing that young team along and kind of just getting minutes and, just playing in a lost year for the Thunder pretty much. And the big news here is that they get 2 second-round picks. I think they are now at 34 draft picks over the next 7 years. I think 17 first round and 17 second round. Now, I don't think they'll keep all of them, right? I think somewhere down the road, they're gonna have to trade some of them for a pick or to move up or some other players, because you have a 15-man roster. You're not gonna draft 34 guys, right? So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. But the Thunder and Sam Presti continue their quest to get as many draft picks as possible. The Knicks getting Terrence Ferguson. I like this a lot. I think Terrence is a player that has potential still. I know he's kind of raw. A player whose jump shot hasn't come along. He's a guy who tries hard on defense, isn't locked down by any means, but along with athleticism, I think there's some potential there. The Knicks didn't really give up anything. Austin Rivers wasn't getting any minutes. He was the odd man out. And Brazdeikis wasn't getting minutes anyways. So I think why not? I like what the Knicks did here. The Mavs get shooting in JJ Redick and Melli, who was unhappy because of the minutes he was getting or lack thereof in New Orleans. The Pelicans get James Johnson, Wesley Windu, and a second-round pick and cash. I think it's a win-win for both teams. The Mavericks get some of the shooting they lost in the deal when they dealt away Seth Curry for Josh Richardson. The Pelicans getting James Johnson, another veteran guy to help their team, and they get a second-round pick, right? They get a second-round pick for a guy who wasn't really a part of their future plans. So I think both teams win. I thought the Pelicans would be able to get a bit more for JJ Redick, but I guess the market for Redick wasn't crazy, seeing as Redick's never been a great defender and he's mostly a shooter and he's struggling at shooting this year. So maybe teams are a little bit hesitant. JJ also comes with a decently hefty contract as well. Despite it being an expiring one. So maybe teams are just a bit hesitant and we're looking to get shooting elsewhere. But yeah, I think it's good for the Mavericks. They get two pieces that can help them now. And without giving up too much, Wesley Windu, James Johnson, second round pick. Powell going to the Portland Trailblazers. I like this a lot. Right. It was a situation where Gary Trent was probably their best defender, but when you're in the West, at least right now, you're gonna have to face the likes of LeBron James, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and just to name a few, right? But those guys are all, I think, too big for Gary Trent, and we saw it in the past. We saw it last year. Gary Trent tried admirably, but he just didn't have the size to match up with some of the best guys that the Blazers would have to get through to get to the finals, right? So, and it's unfortunate because if it was Gary Trent on a different Western Conference team, and you look at some of the teams, then it's like, all right, Gary Trent can guard the likes of Dame and CJ, or at least try to, right? But again, LeBron, Kawhi, Paul George are all just too big and too strong for Gary Trent. And I was talking with some of my friends, but I think Norman Powell is just a bigger, better version of Gary Trent, right? Norman Powell might be giving up some defense, but still tries, has the athleticism. I think he's a solid defender and a way better offensive player, at least more consistent. He can shoot the shot, shoot the three, and also take advantage of mismatches and get his own shot off the dribble, which Gary Trent wasn't necessarily adept at or consistent at. Rodney Hood, did offer some shooting and defense as well, but I think overall the Blazers got an upgrade. I think the Raptors actually did all right. I think Gary Trent, the Raptors are going to have to decide if they want to pay him or not in the future. But they got two solid pieces who can help them now, but also are young enough where they could be in their future plans as well. Rondo going to the Clippers, I think it helps the Clippers, right? But that's if the caveat is if playoff Rondo is a thing you believe in or not, because not everyone believes in it. And I know playoff Rondo had his moments last year for the Lakers, but people forget that he had some really bad games as well. It's not like his whole playoffs were immaculate and really good and clean. He has some really bad games. But I will say he also had his moments. And if you're the Clippers, maybe that's all you need. Now, the Clippers were trying to get a guy like Lonzo, which I don't think anyone believed they'd be able to just because of the lack of assets they have. Now, the Clippers, right, the thing you see in both Rondo and Lonzo Ball are the fact that they are playmakers, offensive facilitators, and that's exactly what they need. You see a lot of the games where the Clippers struggle in, they struggle to get good offensive shots or just have an offensive facilitator or a guy to get shots for guys not named Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And Rondo is that at his best. Now, Rondo isn't always at his best. And when he's not at his best, he can look really bad. And I don't know if you guys remember last year, there was a stat that talked about, I'll try to see if I can find it, but Rondo pretty much, when he wasn't on the court with LeBron, was one of, if not the worst statistical NBA players offensively in the league. It was bad. It was really bad. So it's not like the Clippers were in love with Lou Williams. Lou Williams is a very inefficient scorer at times himself, doesn't offer much outside of scoring, doesn't play any defense, doesn't play make for other people. So it's not like they gave up a lot. But does Rondo fix the Clippers' problems? I don't think so. Can it at certain times in the playoffs? Absolutely. But I don't think, I mean, the Hawks might. I mean, I think it's a win-win trade because neither team gave up too much and both teams got something they can use. Again, the Clippers can use a veteran point guard to help them with the offense, especially come playoff time, and the Hawks get another bench scorer. And it's not like Rondo was playing great for them anyways, so I guess they get some, again, just some backup for Trae Young and also a second round pick and some cash. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a trade where both teams come out getting what they wanted. The Bulls getting Vucevic, also Al-Farouq Aminu, and the Magic getting Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter Jr., 2 second-round picks. I think this was a great trade for both sides. I really do. Now, my ideal situation was the Celtics getting Vucevic, but I think the Bulls getting Vucevic is great. I love the fact that they are trying to win now, and by win now, I don't mean contend for a championship, but at least get into the playoffs and start making some noise and showing Zach LaVine that you are trying to make him happy and trying to win. And getting an all-star like Vucevic definitely helps. Um, Helps up their offense, obviously. Now they have an inside-outside game. Vucevic can also shoot the three, so it's not like you have to only play him as a traditional big. It's going to give Zach LaVine way more space and help, and he's already become an efficient 30-point scorer. Al-Farouq Aminu gives them some more three-point shooting from the corners, some defense, some veteran leadership as well. I also like what the Magic got. They got Wendell Carter Jr., who's a very solid young player. Been inconsistent at times. He's looked good at times, and then at times even fallen out of the rotation in Chicago, even losing his starting job to a guy like Thaddeus Young. Otto Porter Jr. is going to be an expiring contract, and they get 2 first-round picks. Now, they probably won't be in the lottery because Chicago figures, or at least will try to make the playoffs, but maybe close to the lottery, maybe even in the lottery if something happens to that team. Yeah, I think Orlando, having decided to fully go in and rebuild, I think got a pretty solid haul for Vucevic. And then now you have the Celtics getting Evan Fournier. I actually don't think this one should be above the Aaron Gordon one. Or the not the Aaron Gordon, but the Vucevic one. I think the Vucevic one has more importance and is a better and bigger trade. I think Evan Fournier is a solid player who plays, I would say, probably average defense, can make plays when he is asked to, because he's more of a scorer, right? But I think he has a skill set to be a playmaker if asked to, and he's probably an above average scorer. But I don't think he moves the needle for Boston. I think I said this multiple times, but I think Boston needed a playmaker and a big, and Evan Fournier is neither of those things, right? So, I mean, it's solid. He gives them shooting. He gives them some help for Kemba, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it just moves the needle enough. I think the Vucevic trade it helps Chicago more than this helps Boston. The Magic got 2 second-round picks in Jeff Teague. I mean, I don't think you were going to get too much for Evan Fournier. I thought they would be able to get maybe actually, I mean, 2 second-round picks. I guess they got what they thought they could, or what I think most people believe that they'd be able to get. It's not a bad trade by any means, but I don't think it's of higher importance than or a bigger impact than the Vucevic trade. And again, I just don't think it moves the needle for Boston at all. So this is probably the most talked about trade, right? I think Aaron Gordon going to Denver is possibly the most impactful, but this is the most talked about trade in the last 24 hours. Actually, of the ones that at least happened, right? Because the Kyle Lowry one probably is the one that got the most attention, and nothing happened. And be it the Heat got Victor Oladipo for almost nothing, pretty much. I know Kelly Olynyk had become a pretty solid piece of their team this year. You know, with the team struggling a lot, they relied on Kelly Olynyk, his shooting, and just floor spacing. But you know, in the grand scheme of things, they didn't need him. And Avery Bradley was in and out of the lineup, and you know he's an injury prone guy and a pick swap, right? So they got Victor Oladipo. Now, what this does for Miami is, I think, you know, it gives them some more offensive help. Oladipo hasn't shot the ball efficiently last couple of years, but you get a guy who's capable of scoring 20, 25 on any given night. A guy who, you know, can space the floor a little bit, but also a slasher. Is going to just ease the pressure off of Bam, Tyler Hero, Jimmy, Goran Dragic. An above average defender when needs to be. I think, you know, hopefully I think the Miami Heat and the fans, their hope is that that whole situation, right? The winning situation, the fact that they went to the finals last year, the coaching, Pat Riley, the culture will get Oladipo even more focused than he had been. And I'm not saying that he wasn't focused or motivated, but that it'll really get him to buy in and kind of rejuvenate him. And then hopefully you get an Oladipo who doesn't need to do as much offensively by himself, so he shoots the ball more efficiently and is more bought in and focused on defense. And if he can stay healthy, then he could be a very big piece for that team. And then you probably have a LaMarcus Aldridge who is reportedly leaning towards the Heat, right? And you have that in the buyout waiver market. So I mean, Miami did really good during the trade deadline. I think they did a great job. They didn't give up much. They got Oladipo. They are possibly going to get LaMarcus Aldridge, and then you have a team that now upgraded pretty significantly. Not a crazy amount, but noticeably upgraded without sacrificing their financial flexibility for this upcoming summer, right? And you have guys like Kawhi Leonard, who I'm not saying is going to want out, but if he opts out and wants out, Miami could very easily go after a guy like that now because they have, again, the flexibility, and then they still have the ability, and they've retained the big pieces on their team, the core, if you will. Um, and number one, you have the Nuggets getting Aaron Gordon for Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, and future first round pick. Now, I talked about this and the fit that this will, you know, how good this of a fit this is for Aaron Gordon and the Nuggets. Because of just, I mean, I think he just fits in seamlessly. He's a guy that can swap with Michael Porter Jr. on defense, even Will Barton. I think those three guys can guard 2, 3, 4 for the most part. You have a situation where Aaron Gordon can play off the ball. He's shown the ability to do that off of Vucevic, a guy that operates in similar spaces as Nikola Jokic. And Aaron Gordon did a very good job for the most part, you know, whether it was cutting, slashing, and shooting off the catch and shoot. And, you know, he became a pretty efficient shooter, especially from the corners. And you have a guy who can also take advantage of mismatches, get his own shot. So, yeah, I mean, you have a situation where if you're an opposing team, Denver's going to be very hard to guard with Jokic and Jamal Murray and just everything they can do and they've been doing, whether it's individually or with the pick and roll, pick and pop situation. If they're in a two-man game and on the weak side, now you have Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, Will Barton, JaMychal Green, you know, Campazzo. You have a lot of guys now who you know, interchangeable guys who can shoot the three, guys who can also slash, and it's going to be very difficult to guard this team. Now, another reason I like Aaron Gordon and this trade isn't only because of the offense. Now, Denver's offense is going to be really dangerous, but their offense was already really solid. But Aaron Gordon is also going to help their defense. Now, Denver, in the past, despite having Jokic, who's not a good defender, had been a very solid defensive team. You know, Mike Malone is a very defensive-oriented, defensive-minded coach, and that's kind of the thing he always preached. And they haven't been a good defensive team this year. They've shown glimpses of it, but it's been inconsistent. And I talked about the fact that they lost Torrey Craig, who tries really hard and is a versatile defender in terms of being able to switch, and then Jeremy Grant, who just tried really hard, right? They lost both of those guys, and I think it showed. Aaron Gordon is an upgrade on both of those guys defensively, in my opinion. I think he's a guy that is athletic enough, strong enough, quick enough to guard 2, 3, 4, like I said, even fives in certain small lineups. And I think Denver, especially at home with their altitude and everything, but if they're able to defend better and get out in transition, that's only going to help guys like Jamal Murray, Will Barton, Michael Porter Jr., and Aaron Gordon. All four of those guys excel and play really well in transition and on the fast break. So I think their defense will improve, and because of that, their offense will be even more scary than the things I just listed at the beginning in terms of their half court offense. So I like this trade a lot. And again, with Aaron Gordon, and then you get JaVale McGee, and you only give up RJ Hampton, which I know is, he was a young guy who the Nuggets thought had some potential and a future first round pick. But Gary Harris, they give up. I know he had been an important part of that team in the past because of his defense, but his shooting had kind of been abysmal at times, and they give up Hartenstein and picks, right? So I think they improved their team drastically without giving up too much. They keep their core. They keep even Bol, who some people thought they'd have to get rid of. So yeah, I mean, I think they improved a lot. I think the winners of this trade deadline have to be Denver, Miami, and Chicago for improving their team without really giving too much away. Orlando, I think, is an outlying winner just because, they did give up a lot, but they, I think, finally embraced the rebuild, and I think they're on their way. They have some really intriguing pieces, right? So they have Wendell Carter Jr., they have still Jonathan Isaac, who is an all-NBA level type of defender. Markelle Fultz, who is playing really well, and they have a lot of picks. So I think their rebuild is on their way. They even have some young pieces right there. They also have Cole Anthony, and just some guys who they're taking a look at this year. This year, the rest of the season for the Magic is really just going to be about seeing, and just letting the young guys play and seeing kind of who they want to keep, who they don't want to keep, and all that. I will go back to the Oladipo trade real quick and why it was so talked about, right? I forgot to mention, but just the fact that the Rockets swapped Caris LeVert, who they could have had, for Oladipo. So LeVert's now in Indiana, where Oladipo was. And LeVert, a lot of people looked at as a guy who's a potential all-star, a guy who's shown a lot of potential. 20 points per game guy. Can get his own shot, can even play make a little bit. He did have some turnover problems in Brooklyn, but and it's not a good defender, but still, I think a way better player, at least a prospect overall in terms of, and you keep in mind that the fact that he's under control, right? You have team control over him, and younger and cheaper. I think just Caris LeVert was a way better player to have or keep than Victor Oladipo. And now you look at what the Rockets ended up getting for James Harden, and it's not much. It's Kelly Olynyk, Avery Bradley, a few pick swaps here and there, especially with the Nets as well. But overall, I mean, you get really no, pieces for James Harden, and all of that because Tillman Fertitta didn't want to deal with the Sixers where Daryl Morey is at because of their beef. But the reports are that the Heat could have, or not the Heat, but the Rockets could have gotten Ben Simmons, and instead you end up with Kelly Olynyk, Avery Bradley, and pick swaps. So not a good look at all. The Rockets really fumbled the bag on that one. And you look, I get James Harden was unhappy, but you give up an MVP candidate and a former MVP, and that's all you get. So it looks really bad for them. Tillman Fertitta decided that it was worth making his team and his fans and everybody that works for his organization suffer because he wanted to be petty. So not a good look. But yeah, that's my overall breakdown of the trades. Again, I think Chicago, Miami, and Denver were the winners. I think Boston didn't do enough, but I also didn't think Boston was really going to be able to fix anything during the deadline. But yeah, that's my opinions on it. We will be back tomorrow, probably with a video breaking down Vucevic's fit on Chicago, but not 100% sure yet. But we should have a video out tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you guys again soon. Peace.